Hi, Kate.
Hi, Andy.
Thanks ever so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. Can we start by my asking you to introduce yourself, please?
Of course. So, hello, my name is Kate Walker. I'm the Digital Programme Director for the Suffolk and North East Essex Integrated Care System. I have a number of hats. I also lead across the east of England on a collaborative network of digital leaders called the East Accord. And through that programme, we're leading on the connection of care records across health and social care.
Wow. Hopefully we'll hear a bit more about that later.
Indeed.
So my first question is a pretty common one when I start these off. It's partly about yourself and partly about your team. So how have you been looking after yourself, or how are you looking after yourself during the pandemic, and how are you supporting your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when COVID started, we all faced with an unprecedented challenge we've never really considered in my lifetime, and I think everybody just stepped up. I think just talking about, start with talking about my team. So I've got quite a small team that works across the integrated care system, and they're quite new as well. So in fact, some of them are, they're in the first couple of weeks. So they've come in to do a role, and all of a sudden the landscape changed. And we shifted from this long-term planning approach to really being able to focus in on what was important and immediate now. So as a team, we got together, we were having, as you can imagine, daily calls. We focused in our work on what could we achieve in one day, what could we achieve in 1 week, and then everything else. So it was very much a cyclical, what's the most pressing challenge today? And we worked really collaboratively, but people were working from home, they were working differently. As technologists, I guess we're used to working in different technological ways, but actually, the change that it gave to having your family around, to looking after your children whilst you're doing it, was something that all of the team faced. And I think it was just about being adaptable and recognising this for the first time. Our personal lives and our professional lives came crashing together. And so we took a lot of time to support people through their individual needs and challenges. We took a lot of time out, I suppose, spare time to be social. It wasn't a case of forced fun, come out and hang out with me in the virtual pub. It was, look, we need some downtime. We need to just be able to throw off the shackles. So supporting the team was just really about very much checking in, making sure people were okay, they were supported, they had the right kit, they could do what they need, they knew who to talk to and how to get hold of them, but also recognising it was okay not to be okay, and be able to support. I had a number of people in my team who were shielding and were vulnerable and fearful, and of course providing a different support for those. I suppose, secondly, I work in a space where it's about networks of people. So they're not my direct team, but we pull together a virtual team very, very quickly, working across the east of England and Suffolk and North East Essex. And we were in calls constantly together. And a lot of that was about supporting professionals around the region to support each other, to be kind to one another, to recognise that we're all facing inordinate challenges. And we really we used an approach that had been used with loads of other things in the challenge. Mutual aid. We recognised it wasn't about what it was in for me. It was really about where's the most pressing need, and to do the right thing, we need to support one another. So support one another to be brave, support one another to do the right thing in a really challenging and complex circumstances. So I suppose just spending enough time to reach out to people and recognise this as a human tragedy, a human challenge, and it's affecting each one of us differently. I mean, myself, I think looking after myself, eternal challenge. I think in the first few weeks, similar to everybody, it felt like it was permanently attached to the phone and to the laptop and to Teams meetings. And I reflected, after about maybe 3 weeks of kind of that solid, actually, I probably wasn't looking after myself the way I should have been. It was dark. We were starting in the dark in the morning. We were finishing at dark at night, and suddenly realizing through the day when was lunch, and actually you need to stop, to breathe. To be a leader, you need to be able to look after yourself so you can be the best person you can be. So I think I recognise that, and I mean, I'm very blessed. I live in Felix. I live by the sea, and as the days got lighter, I started gardening in between my spare time, taking a wander down to the beach. I've got kayaks, so as soon as I got a couple of hours free, take the kayaks out onto the water, go for a cycle, get a bit of energy, get a bit of exercise, and making sure that I was focusing on really good food, and also I think sleep. Sleep was so important, and it's something we can often forget. So, making time to unwind at the end of the day, throw off those shackles and actually get a really good night's sleep was really important. So I think I've become better at looking after myself through that. So
yeah, I'm glad that you're looking after yourself as well, because especially when your office is also your home, those boundaries can become very blurred. And it's also good to hear that you took the time to think about your team's personal needs, because the temptation is just to hit the ground running and just keep going because there was so much to do. My next question is this. So what are the key impactful things that the digital program enabled during the COVID response?
So as COVID was coming towards us and hospitals were preparing and care homes, GPs were preparing, I think one of the main things we recognised very quickly is a lot of our workforce needed to work from home. Now, thousands and thousands of people, all of a sudden, instead of using a desktop and going to the office, they're going to need a laptop, they're going to need a mobile phone, and unbelievably, the whole country was doing this. So, February, there was a recognition that actually suppliers of laptops and suppliers of remote access, they were running out. So that was one of the first and most palpable challenges. If the whole country's run out of laptops, where do we get a stock and a source? So again, we worked together as a team to be able to identify different sources of equipment, being able to rapidly deploy them. We worked with local organisations to have logistics handled, just the logistics of being able to get hundreds of thousands of laptops received, built and distributed. It was a logistic challenge we've never faced before. That was remarkable, but there was a concern for some time that actually the technology wouldn't arrive in time, just the supply chain would have been challenged. So whilst we were doing that, we were working with the Midlands to create an innovative application so that even if kit didn't arrive, if people had maybe iPads or personal devices, they could securely access their work information. So we created an application whilst we were gathering laptops and different technology devices, just so we had different options. That application has become so innovative and so transformational. We're now working with a national team as to how to adopt that across the country. But that was really in response to an unprecedented crisis. We just couldn't source the kit fast enough. But then there were so many other things. The adoption of online consultations so that people could connect to their clinicians over the internet. Video consultations just went through the roof. I mean, we're talking here on Teams, and 6 months ago we'd have been meeting in an office. So the use of video consultation just rocketed. It completely changed, I think, the approach we have to health and care. What's remarkable is there are organisations within our integrated care system now that 75-80% of their activity is now done virtually, and that happened in weeks. Generally, in a digital program, that might take 2 or 3 years to achieve, but just in a very rapid weeks, we were able to mobilise these. So the adoption was phenomenal. We had to think about some of the other challenges that people would face, vulnerable people. So as they started being locked down and being from home or being isolated, how do we get medication to them? How do we do that? So already our GPs were using electronic prescription services. So you could go in and order online, but we couldn't distribute them to you without having to go up to the pharmacy. So just making those connections and making that happen. We worked really hard with local government partners to make sure that those who were the most vulnerable were connected to their family, their carers, their friends, and all of those, including getting some low technology devices out to people to remain connected and to support the most vulnerable because of their isolation. And that was a game changer. I think the other thing that was really important is we reached out and made sure that care homes, hospices, wards, they all had tablet devices so that people who were unable to talk to their family or to their clinicians or to their carers, they had the mechanism to do it. We had some fantastic feedback from a care home or from a family member of a care home resident who was able to communicate with their mum and be involved in their exercise class, which they could never have done prior to using technology to do that. We worked really hard with the voluntary sector. We were all under such pressure, but working with the voluntary sector to really think about who might be digitally excluded, who might not be able to connect, and we're starting to work around that to make sure that this approach and these changes can be sustainable. There was some really innovative stuff that happened too. There were some technologies that we had already started adopting that were really utilised and applied the concept into solving real world problems that were right now. So, for example, as hospitals started doing antigen testing, so testing for COVID, they need to be able to schedule a lot of people. Just the man hours to be able to, to book those things would have been phenomenal. But within a few hours, even a couple of days, one of our partners would be able to build an online form so that people could put their details in, and that would automatically transfer over to the booking team and the pathology team and book your appointment. Within 27 seconds, you get an email saying this is your appointment, you're now booked. And so using technology to free up as much time and resources that we had in our sector so that people could be focusing on frontline, focusing on time to care. We also, as the pressures rose and as we understood more about the impact of COVID on ICUs, intensive care, and the recognition that we may be needing to use Nightingale hospitals and surge centres as the pressure grew, we came together across the east of England and we worked out how we could connect records much, much faster than we'd ever done before, so that if we needed to transfer someone from one hospital to another, their information flowed with them. Wonderfully, we didn't require to use the Nightingales or the surge centres, but actually that technology and that rapid approach meant we were able to connect 2 million records, so GP records, hospital records, in just 3 short months. Now, again, something like that would normally have taken years. So we were able to connect information so that people were safer. Clinicians had more time to care for the person that they needed to. I think they're the takeaways for me. As I said, it was just we'd never come together as a group of leaders to work in this way and really exploit the technologies we already had and bring in new ones in a way that supported people who are under some of the greatest pressures they'd ever seen. And I think that's due to collaboration.
That was so comprehensive, and I know it was just a snapshot of everything that you've been doing. It's amazing, really is, and the speed. And I suppose the way I reflect on it is that prior to the pandemic, when you've had these kind of conversations that I've been a party to, I suppose that the immediate response has sometimes been about the reasons why it can't happen, whereas now it's been how are we going to make it happen now. Is that about right? Yes, I would agree with that. I think I've reflected on it a lot. I've spent 20 years working in this field, and I spent most of my career influencing others to grasp hold of this digital revolution, if you like, to grasp hold of the potential that it gives. But there's always that fear of, well, I've got to change and to be able to adopt this way of working, and that's always been a barrier. So I spent 20 years, I suppose, sometimes walking through treacle to be able to maneuver this. And I think what happened during COVID, it was a case of, it wasn't the traditional curve of, oh, I don't want to do that, and then I'll get enthused about it. It was a case of, we have to act now. What do we have that we can improve the situation? That sounds good. Can you do it? Can you do it faster? Wow, that worked. And that change, that cyclical, that rate of change happened probably in 6 weeks. And now we're at a point where people are like, well, what can I do more? What's different? How can I embrace this revolution or evolution, if you like, of digital technology? Fantastic. We'll come back hopefully to excluded people or literacy later. My third question is this: so what did you learn as a leader, and how has your approach altered as a result?
Wow. so many lessons. After I think the immediate pressure alleviated, I took a few days to just really reflect, because never in my career we had such a challenge and such a rich suite of learning. I think my behaviours have changed immeasurably from this. But I think what struck out for me more than anything is by having a common purpose, by having an utter focus. It transcended organisational boundaries. It transcended any other barrier to change. And by having that common purpose and that clear vision of being able to support people, to be able to support our workforce, to be able to support the public in a highly volatile, incredibly complex environment, but the common purpose is what drove us. And endeavouring to do the right thing through that, regardless of the barriers and challenges that you face. As I said, I think, I've been a strong advocate of collaboration and co-production for a long time, but we came together like we've never done before. And that force of collaboration, that energy that created a cycle, a change cycle, and a level of confidence. Communicate. One of the things that a couple of colleagues and I were privileged enough to work out quite early on. You can imagine with technology, everyone does technology. And there's so many different organisations that are doing it in different ways. And as the pandemic kicked in, and as we were operating to a level 4 emergency, we obviously got command and control in place. But what became apparent within a few weeks is that there was probably a disconnect with technology. There were different communication lines that were happening, and it was causing confusion. There was regulatory changes to enable it easier to progress. There were supplier changes. There was a lot of things happening nationally, regionally, locally, and obviously on the front line. And we needed to come together and kind of bridge that communication gap. So we formed a collaborative, a group of people who took all the information from national, made it cohesive, made it readily available on a daily basis to everyone in our community, so that people were picking up the right and most comprehensive information at that moment. So I think communication and from all routes was really crucial, and open and trusted communication. We were all under extreme pressure, and to be able to be in a trusted space, say, this isn't right and I need to do something about it and I don't know how, can you help me? That was so important. And I think for me, I've learned a lesson. It's okay to say I don't know how and I need someone's help. We can't know everything. This is a very complex world. And certainly improved communications, improved collaboration, having a common purpose, and accepting that we don't always know everything. So important.
Absolutely. Be honest with yourself always. That's really important. Thank you, Kate. The last question is this. So it's about looking to the future. What do you think will be the next set of challenges, and how are you approaching them? Yeah,
again, the challenges are both opportunities and threats. So I think there's three main in my mind right now. So the response that technologists and digital leaders put in place was rapid. We accelerated things that we weren't probably as ready to do as we'd have liked. And that means it was just good enough. It did what it needed to do, but there is an action that we need to take around probably stabilising some of those areas and sustaining them for the future. So there is activity that we need to do to support preparation for winter, to be able to stabilise these technologies, to be able to make sure that people, our workforce, are supported in using these rather than there's a tool, good luck. So I think we've all marvellously managed on how to make the most of using Teams, but if you're in an environment where your workplace is changing quite considerably, you've got a whole set of new tools at your fingertips, we've recognised that there's some areas that have really grasped them and made the most of them, and some are really just managing. So supporting people to use technology. I think technology has to be used as a way of supporting human beings as opposed to technology for technology's sake. So that's my first one. I think stabilising and sustaining what we've done. I think the second is we've opened a gateway, and the expectations now of our workforce, of the public, of the amazing things that could happen, is actually rising. And actually, as digital professionals, as technology professionals, we need to rise to meet that expectation. So I think for the first time, many people can reimagine health and care because of the way we're using technology in a different way, how we can support out of hospital care in a different way, how we might use remote monitoring to focus our scarce resources on supporting people who are most vulnerable. So I think meeting expectations of the public, of our workforce and of ourselves is a real challenge, and it's something that I think my colleagues are ready to rise to, which is great. But I think for Suffolk and North East Essex, I think the thing that's been concerning me the most is as we progress through and what everything we've learned through COVID is, there is a concern that we are widening health inequalities, that actually people who have different chances in life or different opportunities to get access to health and care services, those challenges will get greater and greater when you think about the economic challenge of people trying to stay in jobs or find roles, the challenge with housing, with being isolated, all of those things. We run the risk of widening those health inequalities. And I think now is the time to really work with our partners to be able to co-produce support for vulnerable people, to support. And one size doesn't fit all, it is about being able to make this a useful connection, be able to connect people at a place level and their community, to be able to use tools and technologies to support that, to ensure that all of our community can be supported in their needs, in a way, in a challenging set of resources across our integrated care system. We want to be able to provide best possible care. So making sure those who are digitally excluded, those who are vulnerable, those who have other health inequalities, we're actually thinking radically about how we support them in a totally different way. That's
it in a nutshell, isn't it? That it's been an accelerated development over the last few months, but you're taking the foot off the accelerator a little bit, just to make sure that the direction that you're heading in is the right one, and you're not leaving anyone behind, I suppose, isn't it?
Absolutely, and as you know, we're really passionate about getting feedback about what's been done, and working with yourselves and Healthwatch Essex to be able to do a public survey to understand what people's experience, whether they have received health and care services or whether or not they're part of the sector. That's really important, and that will shape our direction as we move forward.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insight as well. I never imagined that this would have been one of the interviews before the pandemic, but it is the subject, isn't it? Very often, of virtually any conversation around the outbreak and the impact it's had. So it's really good to hear.
It has. I mean, I genuinely feel that the 2 months of it was 2 months of tough stuff. And I genuinely feel that was a culmination probably of 20 years career. If it hadn't have been for the 20 years of knocks and career, I wouldn't have been able to step into that place. So yeah, it was a privilege to be part of.
Right. Thank you, and enjoy Felixstowe.
Thank you so much, Andy. Bye-bye.